Israel Update with Gadi and Mike Duran. Hello and welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. It's been 656 days since this war began. It is now the 24th of July, and we have lied about being here every week. With me is my co-liar, Mike Duran. Mike, can you explain what happened?
Well, hello everyone, and hello Gadi. Yes, I have to take responsibility for this lie last week because.
But next week we are going to be here.
I was sitting here, and I was happy that you were taking partial responsibility for the lie, and then you dumped it on me like that so quickly. You set me up.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Well, it's been a harrowing 2 weeks, very nerve-wracking, and we were supposed to be, or we were told by reliable sources everywhere that the deal is just around the corner. And currently, as we are recording, it is now early in the morning in Washington D.C. and early afternoon in Israel. There is no deal yet. So, Mike, why don't we start with the headlines and then dive in?
Well, Gadi, I was actually kind of laughing to myself this morning because the first headline we have is the same headline we've had for the last 2 weeks. Basically, Hamas formally submitted its response to the most recent bridging proposal, reportedly producing guarded optimism among Israeli officials about the prospects of reaching a ceasefire and a hostage release agreement. That's what we've been hearing for the last 2 weeks or longer. Hamas's formal response was submitted after mediators refused to accept an earlier response, which they deemed to be insufficient. Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer is expected to meet today with the United States Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, in Rome. Over the last couple of weeks, Gadi, the situation in Syria has deteriorated with terrible scenes of torture and attack against the Druze minority. Israel intervened against the Shara government on behalf of the Druze and in solidarity with the Druze population in Israel. You and I think, will talk about that later. On July 18, the U.S. House Judiciary Committee found that the U.S. funded anti-Netanyahu protests under the Biden administration, including protests centered around judicial reform. Over the last week and a half, Haredi parties have begun to leave Prime Minister Netanyahu's coalition over the proposed new draft law. If the issue is not resolved, the coalition could possibly collapse, or the Prime Minister may be forced to govern with a minority government. I have some thoughts about that I want to share with you, by the way. And finally, Gadi, in response to Iranian Foreign Minister Arakchi stating that the Iranian nuclear facilities had been severely damaged, President Trump posted on Truth Social, this is on Monday, that, quote, "we will do it again if necessary." Over to you.
Yeah, sure. So should we start from the Israeli internal affairs? As we speak, this is the first time we're doing Riverside, so I'm trying to master the windows here. I think, Mike, we should also mention the worldwide campaign about the atrocities that Israel is allegedly committing in Gaza. A delegation of Jews in an international Jewish youth movement were taken off a plane by a Spanish airline, where the crew called them members or supporters of a genocidal regime. So there was a briefing by the spokesman for the IDF in recent days, which said to all the military correspondents that there is no hunger in Gaza, that it's a campaign of lies, that the skeletal, hungry, dying children are photographed in Yemen and distributed as material about Gaza. And what I think is is most striking is that the campaign goes on in the Israeli press. It is the Israeli press that is leading the campaign about the atrocities in Gaza. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, there's a dearth of leadership around the Western world on this question. Can you think of a single leader, and I have to include President Trump in this, who has said clearly that Hamas is the enemy, Hamas needs to be defeated, and that Hamas is responsible for the hunger for the humanitarian situation in Gaza, that Hamas uses the death of civilians as part of its strategy against Israel. I can't think of a single leader who's laid it out all clearly that way. Can you?
No, but you know, I get calls and messages from friends, among them friends in the United States, who are asking me, is Israel really doing this? You know, worried, friendly calls saying, this is indefensible. How do you want us to defend it? And I keep answering that this is not what's happening. But you know, if the American press following the Israeli press has a story about the atrocities that Israel is committing every single day, then this in the end penetrates. You remember that in the beginning of the war, you kept saying these pictures of dead babies are going to come back and bite Israel, and they're going to stop the war. Well, the predictions were not right about the dates, but the way things are going. In the long run, this is certainly hurting Israel, and some of it is unavoidable, Mike, because there is a worldwide anti-Semitism, and people don't appreciate when Jews defend themselves. They like us as victims. So part of it, I think, we should face by, you know, in the way our friend Dan Shiftan does these things. I mean, if I were on Piers Morgan, which I am not, and I'm not sure I'd like to be, I think I'd behave like Daniela Weiss, you know, instead, because with these people you can never apologize. So Israel needs a branch to say this is all lies.
I don't know who Daniela Weiss is.
Daniela Weiss is a very extreme...
I avoid Piers Morgan, watching Piers Morgan. But,
I didn't see it on. I avoid television in general, but I see snippets on the net all the time. And what Daniela did there was, you know, the Dan Shiftan move. Instead of apologizing about all the dead children, I'll say about moral responsibility something. I'll say something about that in a minute. But what she said is, next time, don't mess with us, which I think is sometimes a good answer if it's also accompanied by official Israeli hasbara, as we call it, calling out the lies of the newspaper. This is also our job. People who are in the media, I do it all the time on Twitter, calling their bluffs. But, you know, we're fighting a horde of Israeli journalists. So let me tell you what my take on it is. And it has two forks, how do you say, 2 points to this attack.
Two prongs.
Two prongs. I missed that word.
How do you say prong in Hebrew?
Wow, I don't know. We don't. Shnei chodim lakilshon, maybe we would say. Kilshon is what the devil holds. Mike.
Pitchfork.
Pitchfork. Together, we can come up with one language, with one coherent narrative. So one prong is the factual prong, saying this is a lie. You are lying. You are anti-Semites, and you are lying. That is, go on the attack. But the second one echoes what you said, and this is all Hamas' responsibility. First of all, we have no obligation to give aid to the enemies. A siege is a legitimate tool. If you read the Pentagon guidelines to warfare, then you will see that in that huge document of 12,000 pages, it says that siege is a perfectly legitimate tool of war if the enemy is taking your hostages, entrenched among a civil population, the responsibility is theirs. But the case of Hamas is even more extreme because they are sacrificing their own population. They are creating a humanitarian disaster.
It's amazing. It's actually amazing. I can't think of another example like this where a leader, a governing authority has used its own civilians as cannon fodder to such an extent. It's amazing, but Gadi, there's
it is. Then let me just finish with the final point of the second prong is that Hamas can stop this immediately if it lays down its weapons and if it returns our hostages. And the idea that you would surrender if your enemy threatens its own population, if you surrender to that, that means you will never win a war. That means that you are legitimizing, incentivizing, using human beings as shields. So anyone who, with any moral maturity, who is not a complete infantile, understands that transferring the moral responsibility from Hamas to Israel is not just a mistake about this war. It is a complete loss of a moral compass.
Yeah, totally right. However, having said all that, David Ben-Gurion, who is, of course, the font of all wisdom, as far as we're concerned.
Right behind your left shoulder.
Where is he? There he is. Ben-Gurion understood that Israel's wars should be short, decisive, and fought on enemy territory. And he thought that the entire security doctrine of Israel should be built on this idea. And the Israelis have allowed themselves in this instance to fight a prolonged war in Gaza. Now, we're how many days are we into this now? You told us at the top.
656, I think I said, yeah.
And so in this war, Israel has managed to diminish Iran and its proxies severely, but it still hasn't defeated Hamas. And that's a problem. It's a real problem. And I'm not blaming Israel for the wave of anti-Semitism, for the propaganda against it, and so on. But it has to, its strategy has to assume that that's coming. It should know that that's coming. That is one of the tools that the enemy has in his arsenal. It's one of the most important tools, and there have to be answers to it. And I would say that the Israeli answer to it, from top to bottom, has been totally inadequate. And it's completely inadequate.
I concur with you on this completely. The problem is that we are being repeatedly dragged into the negotiations with Hamas about a hostage deal. This is our weakness. We should have fought this war in a whole other way. I interviewed one of the parents of the hostages, one who is not among the propaganda branch that is called the Committee of the Families of the Hostages. This is a group among them who was given into manipulators using the issue in order to topple the government, not return the hostages, at the expense of the hostages, by the way. So after this long introduction, I talked to a father from the other group who insists on total victory also as the only way to return the hostages. And he said Israel should have never put the hostages among its war aims, because then you signal to the enemy how important that is. And of course, all these outrageous demonstrations against Netanyahu masquerading as demonstrations for the hostages, calling the return them home now, have only weakened our position. And the army is full of these people, Mike. I know that on this program, you protect the IDF and I criticize it. So you may well put a caveat to what I'm saying. But General Zamir is just a second Herzi Halevi. They are doing the same. It is not the job of the army to declare, well, we achieved 70% of the 75% of the aims, and that's enough. It's not the job of the army to call for a hostage deal, as Zamir is now doing. It's not the job of the army to talk about negotiations. And what the army did is, as Tzvika told me, this man who is the father of Eitan Mor, who is a hostage with Hamas, as he told me, the IDF is not the security company for the hostages. And if the chief of staff comes to a cabinet meeting, and when the ministers demand that he enter Gaza City, other places where the army is not currently present, and he said, well, give me an order to risk the hostages. What kind of argument is that? Does he need an order to risk soldiers?
In my opinion, you said I'm going to defend the IDF. I am. That's a legitimate. He's been given the order to defeat Hamas and protect the hostages, and he's saying, look, you want me to go in there and just clear them out? Then tell me that the priority is not to protect the hostages. He's been put in a very difficult situation by the political.
There are many things on this issue, Mike. First of all, it is clear to everyone that the hostages will be at risk. Secondly, there's a whole propaganda campaign saying that if the IDF comes close, then they murder the hostages. This is complete BS. You know, they give the example of the 6 hostages executed when the army entered Rafah. What happened there is that Sinwar was moving with 6 hostages to protect him. And when he decided to go over ground, this became too big a delegation and he just executed them. We know from hostages who have been released that they have frequently heard the IDF close by and nothing happened to them because that's logical too. They are the insurance of the Hamas terrorists, and so the idea that they would be executed when the IDF comes close is ridiculous. And let me tell you what's happened. I don't want to get into the specific incident because it's I don't want to hurt the people inside. But soldiers have been killed because the IDF has drawn a parameter around everywhere they think hostages might be, and in that parameter it became a how do you call the Ir Miklat? You have that in America.
A safe zone.
A safe zone for the Hamas fighters. What Israel should do, and I've been saying this repeatedly, and the army is not doing this because of a combination of Brigadier General Aluf. Aluf is more than Brigadier General. It's a general. General Nitzan Alon, who is at the head of the hostages intelligence branch that they've constructed in the army and has been sabotaging the war effort. The Matpash, which is, let's not get into it, it's another branch of the army dealing with relations with the civil population, who is protecting civil population by risking IDF soldiers even more. And of course, the Attorney General of the Army and others. All these have pooled resources together and influenced Eyal Zamir in a way that we are not doing what we should. I interviewed Amit Halevi, who sits on the Committee of Defense and Foreign Relations in the Knesset, and he keeps saying this. We should divide the Gaza Strip into square areas. Each such area should have a humanitarian corridor for all the civil population to evacuate. After that is done, we should apply a total siege to that area, which will include gasoline, food, and water until those still there will come up with their hands over their heads or release our hostages. If we give them food and we give them fuel, then they are able to operate the ventilating system that allows them to stay underground wherever, if you create those safe zones, wherever your own soldiers get killed again and again. Whenever soldiers go near them, they can't use the instruments of the IDF to clear mines. They cannot chase enemy terrorists out of the area. They cannot protect themselves. They cannot destroy buildings. And so they expose soldiers again and again. And people are saying, Mike, how many soldiers are we going to sacrifice because we are not willing to take any risk with hostages? Hamas is holding us by the throat because we are so sensitive on this issue. And instead of biting our lips and being tough, what we are doing is just trying to cater to their demands. And they're just playing for time until the election's here, until the dead babies in the press force Israel to stop.
My point is just very simple. The sensitivity that you're describing as your weakness is runs through the whole political system, not just through the IDF. And I wouldn't just blame the IDF for this.
Yeah, okay. You're performing your part in defending the IDF. I would like Zamir to be replaced. This is not what he promised, and I fear that these people who are stopping the efforts of the IDF, what they really have in mind is preventing an occupation, Mike. Remember, until the sorry.
That is part of it. That is part of one of the. If we went through the list of why is it that in 1956 Israel took over Gaza in a matter of days, in less than a week, completely took over the whole thing, and it's taken almost 2 years now. The part of the answer is, okay, the military situation has changed. There weren't tunnels then. There weren't these some of these disruptive military capabilities that Hamas has, but a lot of it has to do with Israeli society and Israeli concerns. And the political divisions and the issue of the hostages.
Let's not let the cabinet off the hook here. It is the job of the prime minister and the minister to pound the table and tell the army, go win this war. Stop making excuses.
You even have political disagreements inside the coalition about what the day after should look like, right?
Yeah, I think that inside the coalition, the differences are between those who are willing to call it occupation and those who are not. I think only a minority really thinks that any Palestinian revitalized Palestinian authority can be.
I'm talking about even if we have a total consensus that we're not going to have a revitalized Palestinian Authority. That was a Biden administration effort to accentuate the tensions inside the Israeli government. But even if we put that aside, we say there's a consensus there won't be a revitalized Palestinian Authority. What should be there afterwards is a matter of great disagreement, even among coalition members.
So, what's your opinion about what should be the end game?
I'm not being funny. I'm not being funny. It's not my decision to make. I as an American, watching from a distance, I have a concern about the American interest. The American interest is that Hamas should be eradicated. What comes after doesn't matter.
Well, so I'll put my opinion on the table. I don't think we can allow any form of local government before we occupy the Strip for I don't know for how long, and are able to do something like denazification in Germany. Hamas is embedded in this population.
I don't see how you eradicate Hamas without that.
Yeah, we've had this argument before, but
are we arguing? I think we're agreeing, are we not?
No, you said I thought you said you can't denazify the Gaza Strip, and I'm saying Hamas is supported by the population. And so long as there is a strong Hamas ideology among them, then then Israel cannot pull back. And this may be for very long. This may be for a very long period of time. So
there's a little bit of an argument there. I want everyone who's got a rifle to be killed. That's what I want.
well,
What they have in their hearts, I don't care. Everyone with a rifle has to be killed.
So we do have a disagreement, because so long as you bring people up on the ideology of murdering Jews as your highest moral duty, then a new Hamas will eventually emerge there. And if we assume, like you do, that the problem is only rifles, then in this context, what it would actually mean to prevent rifles is a full administration of the Strip by Israel. If you have a population that is so extreme in its ideology, it will keep seeking guns. So your only way of stopping them is just eternal presence there. And I would like to think that eventually we can at least prevent the bringing up of generations upon generations on this poisonous ideology.
Okay, we can talk about this.
I'm not going to pretend that I know how to do this. I'm just saying, if we don't, we have to stay there. These are the stark alternatives. If we don't, we have to stay there, or else evacuate the Gaza Strip. And I think, and I've said this from the beginning of this war, I think we should annex the whole of the north of Gaza without any population, and they should end this war losing territory. That should be our aim. I don't see the Israeli government doing it. And of course, I support the voluntary relocation of anyone who wants to immigrate out of the Gaza Strip. Okay, enough about that. Let's turn to the Druze, Mike.
Okay. So, Gadi, this is threatening the whole, what I consider to be the number 2 strategic interest of the United States right now. Number 1 strategic interest of the United States is to destroy the Iranian nuclear program, weaken Iran, destroy Iran's nuclear and missile program. That's strategic priority number 1. Strategic priority number 2 is find an accommodation between Turkey and Israel in Syria. That's the strategic goal, and these attacks on the Druze, and then the counterattacks, and then the Israeli intervention. This was either designed to foil that effort, or simply events that got out of control and that threatened it. So I think it's a very, very serious issue that hasn't gotten the full attention that it deserves.
Do you think that Israel's response so far has been adequate?
No, I think the Israelis are a little confused. I think some of what they did they had to do for political reasons, but there are 3 main issues, or let's say 4 issues, that I don't think the Israelis have given clear answers to. So I would move out. What I want to say is I would move out from the events on the ground to the larger strategic frame in which Israel has put them. Israel has developed a new security doctrine after October 7th. Let's call it zero tolerance for monsters on our border. Right? So no more Hezbollah formations on the northern border, no more Hamas military formations in Gaza, and we will not allow there to be any such formations on the Syrian border. And they drew a line.
Call it the Netanyahu doctrine. Let's call it the Netanyahu doctrine.
Is that what people are calling it now?
No, but I think we should. It's our Monroe doctrine.
The Netanyahu doctrine. No monsters on the border. And so with that idea in mind, they drew a line several kilometers south of Damascus, and said no heavy weaponry from the regime south of here. And then they also said, and we have a special interest in the security of the Druze. All right? But which is fine as far as it goes. There's nothing wrong with that as a security doctrine. but that is not a geopolitical vision. So the question is, how does that security doctrine fit into the geopolitical vision? And let me just give you a couple of thoughts here. Question number one, the single most important question that Israel has to answer for itself, and it has not answered it. Does Israel want a unified Syria under Shara, or a disaggregated Syria in which it can turn the whole South into its security buffer? Now, it has not answered this question. There are different tendencies in the government. What everyone in the government can agree on is we have this security doctrine, no monsters, we draw a line, and we're concerned about the Druze. But that doctrine already, especially the emphasizing the security of the Druze, that already tilts the Israeli position somewhat in the direction of a disaggregated Syria. An Israeli policy that seeks a disaggregated Syria, and there are lots of Israelis calling for this, and there are lots of our friend Minister Shikli, for example, called for toppling Shara. There are lots of pro-Israelis in the United States calling for this. That policy of a disaggregated Syria, toppling Shara, puts Israel at odds simultaneously with Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the United States. Not to mention the Shara government itself. This is a problem. So it's a problem. People haven't thought it through. There's a lot of moral posturing or moral exclamations about this, which amount to saying the United States should change its policy, but that's not going to happen. So if you take this, Syria should be disaggregated policy or posture as your own, you have to be aware that you're setting Israel on a collision course with Washington.
Let me add something here, Mike, from your Twitter feed. From your Twitter feed is when you wrote this a few months back, I found it striking when you said, well, if you are going to disaggregate Syria, who is going to create the new order, this new disaggregated order, which is of course the most pressing question.
Exactly. Because I'm glad you put it. Let me give you a couple more thoughts on this. Who's in favor, besides Israel, of disaggregating Syria? Who's the number one actor on the scene who wants to disaggregate Syria?
Turkey would be the beneficiary of that.
No. Turkey's not. Turkey's policy is to aggregate and centralize under Shara.
But if it's sorry, Mike.
Israel.
So explain this. Open parentheses here. If Syria is disaggregated, Turkey will move further in. Do you not agree?
I totally agree.
Okay.
I totally agree. So I'll come to that in a minute. But let me just ask the question: who's for a disaggregated Syria? Openly right now, their policy basically.
Iran.
So Israel is taking the same position as if Israel is not taking a position for a disaggregated Syria. It has a tendency in that direction, is what I'm saying. But the power that is in favor of that is Iran. Because Iran knows that a disaggregated Syria, it can possibly pick up the Alawites or other elements and then reestablish some kind of connection to Hezbollah. The number one priority of the Iranians, outside of all of the problems that they have inside Iran, is to reconstitute Hezbollah, to hold on, to keep Hezbollah from totally going under. It's absolutely the crucial element in their whole proxy network. And they would like to see Syria disaggregated now, so that they can do that. And the Israelis are not thinking about this at all. If they know that the Iranians are up to this, I mean, if they're aware of it, they just don't seem to care. I guess they've decided that the Iranians are so weak now it doesn't matter. But I think they should be thinking about it, and they should also be thinking about everyone else they're setting themselves against, which is not just Turkey, but also Saudi Arabia and the United States. Finally, Gadi, on your point, the idea, people are not thinking the next step after disaggregation. They're reacting to the horrendous images that they are seeing, the attacks on the Druze, and they are seeing it as as horrendous in its own right, but also also a precursor to the development of the hostile forces on Israel's border. And they're saying this must end. We must make Shara responsible for this, and that will. And there's a kind of an assumption that will mitigate the Turkish threat, whatever they perceive the Turkish threat to be. They haven't thought it through. Turkey's a major power with many different instruments for projecting its power into Syria. It will not. It doesn't want a disaggregated Syria now. It wants a unified Syria. But if Israel disaggregates Syria, the Turkish pressure and problem for Israel doesn't go away. In fact, it probably gets worse.
Yeah. It has also been, there is, you mentioned that there are also domestic repercussions for the whole question of the Druze. The Druze share our military burden. Politicians in Israel keep calling them brothers. They serve in the IDF, and Israel is committing to their defense. And this is also a pressing domestic issue because this is a minority that the government and Israeli society in general does not want to alienate, certainly not push to the other side. I'm only going to say something very brief about this, but we have a Bedouin population that used to be something like the Druze, also that used to serve in relatively large numbers in the IDF. And the relations with the Bedouins are changing, mostly because Israel is not cracking down on polygamy. So Bedouins are importing Palestinian women from Judea and Samaria, and bring them together inside, and bring them up together inside Israel illegally. They are here without documentation. And these children spend half their times in the territories. And increasingly, when you hear that an Israeli Arab was involved in terrorism, increasingly this is the result of intermarriage between Israeli Arabs, Bedouin or others, and someone from the territory. So we don't want that tendency happening with the Druze population as well. This is a side comment. Yeah.
Let me point out, that's another issue where I think Israeli policy is confused, or confused might not be the right word. I would say they have yet to answer fundamental questions and think through the ramifications of the answer. Israel has asserted a special concern with the security of the Druze. Is it willing? How is it? How, in a practical sense, is it going to protect the Druze? And that's what these attacks on the Druze showed, that Israel hasn't thought through, doesn't have the mechanisms. There's a large non-Druze population between the Israeli border and the Druze. And the Druze that Israel has declared that it is going to protect are not loyal to Israel, or not entirely loyal to Israel. The Druze of Syria are divided at least into three different groups. One of which wants accommodation and integration. They're in favor of a unified Syria under Shara and want to participate with Shara in it. And on the other end, you have elements that totally oppose it. So, is Israel going to let its policy of protecting the Druze be held hostage to the most to those elements in the Druze population that are hostile to Shara and basically want to blow up his regime? This is a big problem.
And one repercussion of this problem is the question of how do you apply pressure in order to protect the Druze. And the Israeli answer so far has been to threaten El-Julani, Shara, with destabilizing his regime, and that is based on the assumption that he actually controls what's happening with the Druze and can stop it. Is that a safe assumption in your opinion, Mike?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think that when they bombed the Israelis bombed the military headquarters in Damascus, I think that was they bombed it. It was a knock on the roof kind of bomb. It wasn't actually designed to have a serious strategic impact. It was a signal. But I think it was a signal to Israel's own Druze population as much as to the Shara government that we're taking action on your behalf, when it was just a symbolic action, and it was counterproductive. It was counterproductive because Shara doesn't have the capacity to control everything in his environment. And to hold him responsible doesn't mean he becomes responsible. It just sets up dynamics that nobody can control. So that's another sign to me that the policy has not been completely thought through. Another element of this, Gadi, Moafik Tarif, whom I hosted here at Hudson, basically organized a cross-border raid of Druze from Israel into Syria. What other group in Israel would be allowed to do such a thing? This is not. This is if Minister Smotrich announced that the hostages were in danger and organized the settlers to go into Gaza without the permission of the IDF, would anyone accept that? This is
that is part of the, I'd say, messy situation that we have on the border, where questions of sovereignty are not clear at all. And what Israelis have been saying is, well, sovereignty should be clear on this side of the border, and you can't have populations crossing the border to conduct their own revenges. This sounds like, if you probably know the stories about Unit 101 and Kibbutz.
Ariel Sharon in the 1950s.
And Ariel Sharon, a militia inside the army conducting a vengeance on Arab villages across the borders back in the 50s. So we certainly can't have civil populations doing what should not be allowed, even in the army. Any other geopolitical comments on the situation in Syria, or shall we? I've got a minor issue which I think we should discuss, which is a New York Times piece. But first, let's finish this one. And I don't want to go to the other segment without your permission, Mike.
Thank you. I appreciate the deference here. This is. I wanted to say one thing about.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
I want to say one thing really quickly, and I think we actually need to devote the better part of a segment to this at some point. But the disaggregation ideology, or the disaggregated Syria, the breaking up of Syria, the minority rights discourse that Israel is tending toward. So we have to protect the minorities in Syria. We have to protect the Druze and the Christians and the Alawites and the Kurds and so on. That discourse is dangerously vectored against Israel, and I don't think the Israelis have fully thought it all through. This is the position that Iran is taking and has been taking for years. That Erdogan is the Muslim brother leader, and in threatening all of the minorities, and we Iran and its allies are protecting the minorities against the Islamists. This is the position that that Iran has very effectively used through figures like Michel Aoun in Lebanon, who's a Christian. The Aouns are Christians aligned with Hezbollah, Maronite Christians, and the Christians of Lebanon are often in cahoots with the Iranian alliance, and they come to Capitol Hill, and they make arguments on Capitol Hill that the United States should be aligning with Iran to protect the minorities. This is being vectored against Israel in all kinds of ways. that I think Israelis are only moderate, if they're aware of it at all, only moderately. They just got whacked last week with the unintentional bombing of the Catholic Church in Gaza, the church in Taipei. There's a presentation of Israel now as the enemy of the Christians. This is getting a lot of purchase in a lot of areas, and Israel is inadvertently validating it with its own propaganda. It needs to think through this.
All right. So what I wanted to talk about apart from this was the New York Times piece, huge piece in the New York Times Magazine saying that Netanyahu is prolonging the war for his own political survival in order to stay in power.
This is your friend Ronen Bergman.
Yeah, my friend Ronen Bergman. I will update you on this battle on the Israeli front, but also a guy named Kingsley, I think, headed the team there, and Nathan Odenheimer was the third participant. He's their correspondent in, I think, Jerusalem. What do you think about this thesis?
Look, this thesis is the recycling of the same one that we have been arguing against for the last. How many days has this war been going on?
656. 656.
For the last 656 days, you and I have been saying that this is nonsense. If you frame the conflict that broke out on October 7th as Israel versus Iran, and you understand that the Biden administration, throughout as long as it was in power, was trying to reach an accommodation with Iran at Israel's expense. It wanted a ceasefire in Gaza so it could preserve its relationship with Iran. It wasn't building a coalition with Israel and Saudi Arabia against Iran. It was never intending to do that. If you understand that, then you understand that this whole vision is nonsense. Because Netanyahu, he hasn't been, because he had to preserve his relations with the Biden administration, he couldn't openly explain what he was doing. But he understood from moment one that he was fighting Iran, not just Hamas.
Yeah, this propaganda, I must say, is very popular in Israel too, because the same coalition that has been trying to stop the war, the left, is still at it. And look at the changing excuses. The hostage deal, for a long time we saw that as the cause célèbre for stopping the war. Then there is no way to win this war. Then they're on top of each other. They didn't replace each other. Then we will entangle ourselves in a regional war that we will not be able to finish. Then now it is the hunger in Gaza. So the idea is to bring to bear outside pressure on Israel in order to stop the war. And why have they been so bent on stopping the war? We analyzed this when Anthony Blinken was on tours in Israel every 3 weeks, and we said Anthony Blinken saw himself as Kissinger and understood this as the Yom Kippur War. What Kissinger did in 1973, might I mention, Mike, that you wrote a book about this same constellation in 56. What Kissinger was trying to do here in 73 was to create a kind of stalemate in order to bring both sides to realize that they have to compromise. And this was what the American administration, the Biden administration, tried to do. Of course, this was subordinate to their larger regional integration policy, which is the appeasement of Iran, which is why they wanted to put out the fire. But the way they wanted to put out the fire, whether they were honest about it or not, whether they were going to bring Saudi Arabia to the table or whether they were not, the idea was to return Israel to the two-state solution. And the idea of returning Israel to the two-state track is also a way to return the Palestinian veto over Israel's relationship with the whole of the Arab region in the service of not cornering Iran. So let's just lay this out more simply. When you have the Palestinian issue preventing you from reaching the Abraham Accords, as it did for a long time. The Abraham Accords is an idea. Then you are preventing the construction of an anti-Iranian coalition. So the Biden administration was trying to throw a wrench into the engine of the American system of alliance, or Israel's part in it, in order to dismantle it and bring back the idea of balancing Shiites and Sunnis, of making Iran a responsible regime by giving it a stake in the new regional order. So that was the idea of bringing the war to a halt.
I'm looking at the clock, and I think we have to end in 3 minutes, do we not?
We have to end in, I can give you 7. So because... Yeah, so that because I want to get in the dumbest take on the news, and if you have readers' comments, but we can skip the readers' comments if we take too long with the dumbest take. So, do you have a dumbest take?
No, I want to do something else, of course.
Please yourself, Mike. I'll just watch.
I want to talk a little bit about the article that my colleague Zenebra Bua and I wrote in the Wall Street Journal this week, because I thought I thought it was amazing. I didn't mean that. Obviously, I'm praising myself for humorous purposes, but. Man, people are calling me off every 2 seconds here this morning.
There's a way, you have an iPhone, right? You can.
I've never figured out how to control these things. The information that we gathered really changed my understanding of what happened in the 12 Days War, and I that's what I want to talk about.
But don't you want to give this a proper segment next week?
Okay, we'll give it a proper segment next week.
Let's do that.
In the meantime, everybody go read it.
No, I thought it was important. Not only did I think that, I also tasked ChatGPT with summarizing it for Hebrew readers.
You did. You did. You put a very nice summary.
And it didn't. And it didn't get attention in Israel either. It was. I thought it was.
I know. You know what? I don't feel like it got as much. I got some nice emails from people and everything. But I feel like it was a bigger deal than, and I don't know why it didn't hit a chord. I mean, you never know these things.
This is reason enough for us to follow up on that in more details, but we don't have time now.
Just so everybody knows, that the subject is the Israeli cyber attacks against the Iranian financial system.
And so, what is your dumbest take on the news, Mike?
I don't have one.
I see. So, I thought I'd use the time that you would talk about yours in order to find a way to pull mine fast enough out of Twitter, and this didn't materialize.
We are demonstrating a lack of production quality.
Yeah, we did. We did this very hurriedly now. But what I wanted to bring, it's we don't need the visual for it because it's in Hebrew. What I wanted to bring is from the front page of Yediot Achronot, and one article there by Ron Ben Ishai was decrying the hunger in Gaza, and above it was an equal size headline saying a crucial inability of hasbara. Explain that, Mike. So you look at the two things, and one journalist is saying there's terrible hunger in Gaza, and the other journalists are saying we're just failing to convey the truth that there isn't. And the Yediot Achronot editor didn't seem to see the contradiction. How would you call hasbara in English, Mike?
It means explanation, but it's propaganda.
It's propaganda under a nice name. But as you see, we actually need it, because propaganda implies that you are sugarcoating something, and hasbara implies that people are telling lies about you, and you need to explain that there are lies.
We call it in our system. We don't want to say minister of propaganda, so we call it public diplomacy.
Yeah, we need better. That's a very good name. You're better than us, because hasbara is like Hasbara is you explain to someone, and it carries an undertone of condescension. You idiots! I will now explain to you what you don't understand, and everybody
But
knows that we are smart. We don't need to.
that's one of the it's one of the charms of the Israelis.
Okay, so
Let me explain it to you, idiot.
An Israeli diplomat once told me that the difference between Israeli and American diplomats is this. When an American diplomat comes into the room for negotiations, he has a binder, and the binder has slips with little tags. And whenever the diplomat knows all the tags, so whenever you ask about some subject, he goes to the right tag, he opens it, and he said, well, the president said. And the Israeli diplomat also comes in with a binder. And the minute he sits down, he puts it to the side and says, this is all bullshit. Let me tell you what the real thing is.
This is, by the way, this is so true. When I worked in the White House, it always amazed me when the Israelis came in, because every Israeli minister had a different policy. He was saying, well, the prime minister will tell you, but that's not it.
Golda Meir, once said that the problem with the IDF is that we have only generals. So do you also not have any readers' comments, viewers' comments?
No. I have readers' comments, and let me start by saying there were several. I won't bother reading any of them. I'll
2
just tell
minutes.
you.
2 minutes. The clock is running out.
There were several who don't like the lack of organization on our part and our
right.
banter.
They are so right.
Banter.
Yeah, they are so right. And we are going to, at the end of this show, we are going to take vows. And these vows are not going only to be that we will be here every week, except in August because I'm on vacation.
What?
No,
August is right around the corner. How long are you on vacation for?
We'll discuss that, but we have some solutions for that. You're going to interview Mordechai Kedar. I don't know if you know this, but I've got a task for you.
Oh, that'd be great.
I'll arrange this.
I'll take over in your absence, and I'll bring in people who disagree with you.
That would be great. I love that. I'm Israel, and the second vow is that we are going to be loyal to our segments, because I think, Mike, I have a confession. We don't need to fall in love with our own casual demeanor. Huh?
Okay. So you're taking the sign
of the
critic.
I know this is the charm of the show, but we don't need that to seep into unprofessional behavior. Huh? What do you think?
What do I think?
I'm not blaming you. You always feel like I'm blaming you. I'm responsible.
I was just going to say, ouch. Ouch.
You're holding your heart.
You sprung this on me. You sprung this on me here in front of everyone, and it hurts. It's hurtful.
This time, as opposed to the beginning of the show, I share the burden of responsibility with you. You want me to hold my heart too, as if I'm going to have a heart attack?
I just want to say goodbye to everyone because I'm feeling a little emotional right now.
You need some time by yourself.
I'm feeling fragile. Feeling fragile.
Okay. So that will be all from us for this time. And next week we are going to be here. Rumors have it that we are going to be here. So,
but August is coming up quickly.
It's still more than 1 week away. And Mordechai Kedar is waiting for you. I have some solutions up my rolled-up sleeve.
I like Mordechai Kedar a lot. You know why I like him?
Yeah, and the reason we're bringing it is because there are at least young sprouts in political reality of his idea for a solution, mind that, for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
But do you know why I like him, though?
Why?
Because I often disagree with him strongly. But I like him because he's a truly independent voice thinking for himself. It's so rare in today's world. So rare.
And also he speaks Arabic very well, which is
he knows. He really knows that.
Yeah. So he knows what he's talking about. Thank you very much for tolerating us so far, and we will be here for you to tolerate next week. Goodbye.